monetizing digital services since 2004, boosting the entertainment industry by making digital content accessible for everyone. AWG, where innovation meets monetization.
Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. If you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with HCI about the shifting psychological contract at work and the impacts on employee engagement. HCI, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be on the call, Jonathan.
Yeah, it is great to be with you. You're joining us from Cape Town, South Africa. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to have a really fun conversation around employee engagement and the ins and outs of that and what we can do in our teams, in our workplaces through the work design, job design, and how we interact with our teams to increase engagement levels. As we get started, I wanted to share Gijs's bio with everybody. Gijs is CEO and co-founder of WiseTalk. He was born in Cape Town with a strong Dutch heritage and holds an executive MBA from the Graduate School of Business at the University of Cape Town. He's a consummate business builder, went directly from the sale of one business into the founding of another, becoming one of the founders of WiseTalk in 2012. And I can go on, but I'll give you a chance now to share a little bit about WiseTalk, what that's all about, and anything else from your background or personal context, and then we'll dive on into the conversation.
Well, again, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. I sold my last business, and which was in manufacturing, and it had a lot of people, quite a distributed business throughout Africa. And then sold that and really wanted to get into understanding people in an employment kind of space. And my master's thesis was actually written on, the power of open innovation and employee engagement to reprioritize things in business. And I then met my co-founder in the last year of my MBA, self-funded WiseTalk, and really we saw the need for blue-collar workforce engagement, so frontline workforce engagement, people that are generally not part of a communication system, not part of, the guys that do all the work and get the stuff done, but are generally not in corporate email structures or don't have devices. So the WiseTalk journey started in 2012, and it's something I'm extremely passionate about. So on the one hand, being a consummate entrepreneur, understanding all of the difficulties and complexities with starting a business and making it thrive, I think what's really important for us and our team is our byline, or tagline, which is we want to make employees thrive. And, there's lots of literature out there around, what happens when you start engaging employees in a meaningful way. Obviously, there's the payment contract between an organization and an employee, but on the other side of it, it's about what the psychological contract. And if you create a space of trust, people, it becomes a happy atmosphere, and really that's what we set out to achieve with WiseTalk. And It's doing meaningful things for people in a way that lets them be their best selves, both at work and at home. And
Yeah, I
really,
love
that's
that.
the journey we started.
Yeah, wonderful. And you just mentioned a term. It's one I bring up from time to time on the podcast, and that is the psychological contract. Now, that's a term that many listeners, it's kind of a more of an academic term. So many listeners may not be fully familiar with what that's all about. But one thing we've seen is a steady shift and pendulum swing in the psychological contract between employer and employee over the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years. And now we're in a very different space. Maybe take a moment and describe what that psychological contract is and your perceptions on how that's been shifting over time and what that means for
So that's a really good question. I think, when we started the Wise Talk journey 10 years ago, I had the privilege of, knowing quite a few CEOs of, big listed businesses or big manufacturing businesses or retail stores or, in the mining sector and manufacturing sector. And you'd go and speak to these guys and say, look, this is really important. And at that stage, it was still very foreign. And the premise of a psychological contract is, I undertake to work for you. And in terms of that, I have a behavior that I have to conduct, but I also have an output that I need to deliver in terms of me retaining that salary. But above that are the relevance of trust, the relevance of transparency, the relevance of, speaking to people and dealing with them as human beings, and not as part of cogs in a wheel or as a liability or an asset. That it is a human being, and if we treat one another respectfully and we treat one another in the way we want to be treated, that accelerates the psychological contract, and an acceleration of the psychological contract leads to engagement. And not our stats, but stats from Gallup will indicate, firstly, that over 80% of people are disengaged from work. But what starts happening when you start engaging people in a meaningful way? And you see massive changes in business, and at the end of it, it improves productivity and profitability. But it's a long journey. In many organizations, in many sectors around the world, trust has been broken. The fact that businesses operate on a quarter-by-quarter basis without a long-term view to things doesn't help the situation either. And I think for us, it's having this amazing business, which is really purposeful, but it's also to show people what change can mean, both for employees, but also for businesses over time. And that for me is what we want to be, what we want to stand for as a business going forward.
Yeah, thanks. And engagement, that term gets thrown around a lot. I think nowadays, there's certain buzz terms and most people are familiar with this idea of employee engagement. The question is, do people really know what that means, how to increase employee engagement, why it really matters? What do you mean by employee engagement? And when you envision a better employee engagement in the workplace in the future, what does that mean for you? Might that look like?
I think starting out this journey has been difficult, as most people will attest to. Starting new businesses. I think our focus as a business when we started was we weren't trying to answer questions for a business. We were trying to answer questions that frontline workers had. What are your issues at work? What are things that you would like to see that you don't see? What are digitization processes that you'd like to have in the palm of your hand that you don't have currently? Make it easy to use. Make the user experience easy, simple, not complex. Complexity, you don't get users looking at complex systems. They want simplicity. They want things at the touch of a button. So we've gone on the journey not only to be relevant from a communications perspective to employees, but also getting their pay slips or their leave processing or their schedule management, all of that kind of stuff directly in the palm of their hand. So a big thing is what's in it for me as an employee. What are those questions you're answering for me? Because by answering those questions, you are telling that individual as a business that we care about you. We want your lives to be easier. We don't want things to be rigorous. We don't want it to be difficult for you to get stuff that you should have at your fingertips already. And with a real focus, because we're very sector-led, particularly manufacturing and mining, real focus on health and safety, because these things can cost people's lives and, if things go wrong. So big attribute for us is how do we understand the sectors that we operate in? How do we become, I hate using the word expert, but how do we become more knowledgeable about those sectors that really enhance the work lives of the employees that in the businesses that they serve. So for us, it's I get you on the buzzword being employee engagement. I think for me and for our team, it's about doing so in a sincere way, that it's done with care, and that the other positive effects will flow over time. But it's certainly not about just the software. It's certainly not about switching on a light and hoping everything's going to work immediately. These things take time. And it is part of getting stuff wrong and hopefully getting stuff more right over time, but understanding that it's a journey, and typically that, will be 2 to 3 years, 5-year journeys that companies have to go on.
Creating an environment of engagement, a culture of engagement, and embedding in the systems, the mechanisms of the organization, integrating engagement throughout the policies, practices, and procedures of the organization is really, really important. And that's when it gets past the buzzword, so we can talk the talk, but are we walking the walk? And that's what I'm hearing you saying. And I agree. Yeah. I think that's super important. You've already alluded to some of the benefits of higher levels of employee engagement. I think it's worth reiterating and noting, especially right now, and, there's been lots of conversations around the Great Resignation, around quiet quitting, these sorts of things. To use a more academic term, psychological withdrawal in the workplace, right? These are all the types of things that have been an issue for organizations for a long time, but in the aggregate right now, it seems to be collectively in the public awareness. A lot more and more people are thinking about it and concerned about it. How do you see employee engagement directly connecting with and linking to psychological withdrawal, quiet quitting, turnover, and how can increased employee engagement not only help our people, the human case for being good and respecting our people and treating them well, but also the bottom line of the business?
We've got 2 really amazing case studies as a business, but as a third is obviously as CEO during the whole COVID period. Generally our workforce, 65% of our team are women. Some of them are young moms, and being in an apartment or in a house with young kids, and we noted in our own team that there was significant stress on people because they didn't have a place to go. They had to be, because we had to isolate as a nation for a number of months. So I saw firsthand the strain that put on our team, and internally we put a lot of things into action to make things more bearable for people. But on the business front, we have a number of very large businesses with newer, say younger CEOs, and their methodologies are quite distinctively different to the methodologies of the past. One of them is a very large retailer.
Monetizing digital services since 2004. Boosting the entertainment industry by making digital content accessible for everyone. AWG, where innovation meets monetization.
And, verbally noted to me some months ago that by engaging over our solution to his people, he does video broadcasts every quarter. On average, every employee watches those video streams at least 10 times, which they share with their family and friends, and it becomes a brand of pride. And they've noted more than 20% reduction in staff turnover over the last 18 to 24 months. And then in the mining sector, we've also been recognized for having helped improve health and safety. Obviously, there are many things in play to support health and safety improvements and support retention improvements. But to know that you're part of a system that's making that better is a huge achievement for us as a business, and really what we set out to do as a team and as a business. But it's about all of those things, the immense strain and stress that people are under, and how we recognize what we can do to make people's lives a little bit better every day.
Yeah, and even just 5% better if we can try to be 5% better every day, just incremental improvements, right? We don't expect anyone to
the power of
exactly, and we don't expect perfection from people, and everyone is learning while they're going. Everyone's building the plane while they're flying it. And everyone is going to have missteps and setbacks. But if we're just constantly being self-reflective and thinking about our teams and thinking about how we interact with our teams and how we're engaging our teams and valuing them and building trust with them and et cetera, just doing just a little bit better every day, we will have truly remarkable teams, and we will be a truly remarkable leader if we're committed to that and if we do that. So anyways, I really like how you're framing that up. And this goes hand in hand with the employee experience. There's so much conversation around customer experience, customer is king. And increasingly, especially over the last few years, I've seen an increase in people talking about employee experience, that they're recognizing that from a stakeholder perspective, just like customers are key, so are the employees. Without your people, you will not have an innovative, sustainable business. It's just impossible. And oftentimes, in certain industries, maybe more so than others, but people have oftentimes historically been seen as an expendable resource of an organization. There's been exploitation, there's been abuses. Taking a human approach to the employee experience and recognizing the importance and value of our people to the success of the organization, not to mention just the fact that they're human beings that deserve dignity and respect and to be treated well. That goes hand in hand with engagement. If you have poor engagement, the employee experience is going to be really poor. People simply aren't going to want to stick around. And word gets out, you have a reputation as an employer, you won't be an employer of choice, you won't be attracting the best people. I think you have a choice. I mean, status quo, stagnant is hard to maintain. You tend to either be improving or declining. And
correct.
If you're declining,
that's so spot on. That is so spot on, Jonathan. Yeah.
If you're declining, it's going to be really hard. And it's a downward spiral, because the momentum can be hard to interrupt once you start to, and especially in this day and age of social media and various websites where employees can leave reviews on their employer and such. The word gets out. People know places that are great to work and places that aren't great to work. So we better pay attention to it.
Yeah, I think there's I think Richard Branson from the Virgin Group said a number of years ago, you want happy customers, you're going to have happy employees. So his thing is that you've always got to put the customer first. He says you've got to put your employees first. And I travel extensively, and there's some brands in terms of airline or hotels or accommodation that I go to because of the service I get from them and because of the personnel that are at those facilities or on those airlines. And I think, if you've got a great brand, it's underpinned by great people. And that I think is where the dialogue is certainly changing, certainly in the clients that we're engaging with. But if you look at the top 5 or top 10 things that CEOs around the world are now having to focus on, from PwC reports to Deloitte reports, etc., like employee experience, employee engagement, they're like in the top 5 attributes that a business CEO needs to approach now, because you've got this great resignation and there's very high demand in certain areas of the world for people with skill sets that are now neutral in terms of, you can be virtual. If it's it doesn't have to be face to face, but if you've got people with skill sets in different geographies, that can now, it's blended. But everything for me in our business and everything that we present to our customers is a journey. And to your point, it's incremental. It's not a tick boxing exercise. These, and we say this to every one of our customers, that we're journey led, and that's the importance of relationships.
Yeah, and that actually connects well to the next thing I wanted to ask about, and that's really having an authentic approach towards employee engagement. Authenticity is key to building trust, to strong leadership, having great teams. All these different aspects are all contingent on authenticity. Maybe describe a little bit how you see it playing an important role in employee engagement, how we need to authentically work with and engage our people, rather than, some of the ways that organizations inauthentically tend to do it, that we see around us all the time.
Yeah, so I think another really good question. I think we've seen oftentimes, particularly when we're engaging with customers, is assumptions that people make. If you're office bound and you're a head of HR, or or you are head of engagement, and you make assumptions about the type of devices people have, by example. So in the blue collar workforce space, maybe 1 or 2% of these people have iPhones. The rest are all Android users. And, what do you do to be data light? What do you do to be efficient so that, data consumption is a real thing for people in certain parts of the world. But the authenticity of what you're undertaking goes beyond software. It goes beyond, have you completed X, Y, and Z? It goes to your point around authenticity is really, when we go and speak to customers, is trying to understand what the pains are of those frontline workers. So we interview people. We don't make assumptions. People will say, these are things that are going right, these are things that are not, but we don't want to be assumption led. And what people understand that is happening on the ground when you're sitting in an office are diametrically opposed. So for us, it's really important to get that authenticity right, because if you are going to do anything around the engagement and you fail at it, you've got a big mess on your hands. Because it's oftentimes that people make promises, they make undertakings. We're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that, and then they don't end up doing it, or there's something that comes in the way, and you haven't been as transparent as you potentially should have been. But people see through that.
Yeah, people see through it a mile away. And I think employees often are a bit skeptical. I think right now, the population in general is skeptical of institutions, skeptical of organizations, which means we need to be hyper-focused on open communication, transparency, and that requires authenticity. So you have to actually be working towards, the aspirational and espoused values and goals that you might have in your organization. You can't just talk about it. You got to actually do it and authentically approach it. And if you're just giving lip service to stuff, people can see through that. You're just going to erode trust. It's not going to help you. I mean, I think that's what baffles me is sometimes leaders, I think they think if they just get up and give a rousing speech and say good things, that somehow that's going to, galvanize their people and make a big difference. In the moment, it might get people excited, but it's not sustainable. And in the long run, it just undermines their own influence, and it undermines the trust that people have in them, and people become skeptical. And so just be authentic, be true to your word. Nobody expects perfection, but work towards it. Work towards making incremental improvements along the way. And that makes all the difference. Well, Gijs, it has been a real pleasure. I know at the time I need to let you go here in just a minute, but before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah. So Jonathan, firstly, again, incredible honor to be with you today. It's a topic I am extremely passionate about. I'm one of those fortunate people in the world that gets to do what they love. And it's a lifelong journey of mine, which I discovered at the age of 40. It's been we're a little bit past that now. But people can reach me on LinkedIn, Gijsbert Kappers, GYSBERT or gijs.kappers@wisetalk.com. And we're obviously just go to our website. There's a contact me on there. I love the topic. I love theorizing on it. And I love putting those theories into practice. So very grateful. Again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. I encourage my audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Gijs and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page. And please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.